Hi everyone, I'm Priscilla Yang. I'm a fourth year bioengineering major here at UCLA, so about to graduate. And this year I got to work with Professor Jeff Burke on my sort of passion project called Harmony in Healthcare. So combining music and healthcare and seeing what kind of cool things we can do with that. And Professor Burke was a really cool person to work with because he's in sort of electrical engineering and also the theater department. So pretty useful. Cool. But sort of big picture overview of my project. So the main issue I was looking at was public engagement within healthcare. How do we promote that? And the new idea here, as you see in the title, is to use music. And to do so, I used a series of case studies. I did some sonic design, so musical arranging with some software. And then lastly, a super simple interface design. And all of that sort of funneled into the final deliverables, which you'll see later. There's a poster, a report, and then a little interface for fun. Cool. But going all the way back to the beginning, so looking at how to engage the general public in healthcare, you see a lot of difficulties, mainly due to things like language barriers or educational barriers, and that arises a lot in minority groups more majorly. Additionally, with the recent COVID-19 pandemic and how the media covers sort of scientific knowledge, there's also been a lot more public distrust in healthcare. And so that sort of brought me to the question of how can we promote healthcare engagement in a way that's accessible, so we can overcome maybe language, education, or other distrust. And being someone who's very involved in music at UCLA too, I turned to music as a choice for a communication method. And it's not just a personal anecdote, so there are a lot of studies going on in the field of music therapy. They're starting to be used in clinical settings. There are even like research papers looking into the idea of a sonification of health. So can we correlate like musical sounds to actual healthcare parameters? So pretty interesting and good motivations for what we want to do. In terms of what my project wanted to do then is to have a software interface that takes in certain healthcare indicators and outputs sort of a personalized soundtrack. So depending on your levels of health, you'll hear a different sound based on your track. That was the goal. Yeah. So before we even started, I wanted to make sure that I could validate music as a method of communication. So does it work and does it like help at all? And so to do so, really briefly, since we're short on time, I conducted some case studies. So I created a mock healthcare report that you see on the left, and I gave it to two participants, so one native English speaker and one non-native English speaker. And they took the test twice. So once they took it without me telling them anything, asking them if this patient is healthy or not healthy in certain regions. And then the second time I played them tonal music based on the report. So if it was healthy, major chord. If it was unhealthy, minor chord played. And if you look, here, super simple graph, but just like quantifying everything. Both participants were able to improve their score with the help of music, and even more so with the non-native English speaker. So music is a way to overcome like language barriers. And on the previous slide, at the end of last year, I was able to present these sorts of preliminary figures at the Biomedical Engineering Society in Seattle. So that was a really good experience, and I think talking to a lot of people within the fields of engineering was a great way to sort of expand the context of our project. Cool. So having validated the idea of using music as a mode of communication, the next step was to actually design the soundtrack. So what do I want people to hear? Why do I want to pick these sorts of things? And to do so, I started making some MP3 soundtracks. I just wanted to walk everyone through what you might hear. So first, I decided on 3 health parameters that I wanted to use. And so to simplify everything, I used heart rate, blood oxygen, and blood pressure. Cool. And then within these categories, then you can split them into healthy or unhealthy. Heart rate goes over range, under range, or in range, right? And so combining everything together, you have 12 combinations of these 3 parameters. So 12 total discrete tracks. And then I have here what I like to call a sonification matrix. So what does each thing correspond to? Each healthcare parameter corresponds to a sound parameter. So heart rate corresponds to tempo, blood oxygen to instrumentation, and then blood pressure to tonality. And so based on where your category ends up, you'll hear a different sound. To make the actual tracks, I used an open source music notation software called MuseScore. I think some people are familiar with, but it's a really helpful tool. And then Lastly, wrapping everything up, I combined everything into a key deliverables. So first, the research poster, as you saw, we'll have a PDF of it online, so you can read through it if you're interested. A research paper to sort of talk more about how I created each soundtrack, the process of deciding what parameters to use. And then lastly, a little interface that we'll take a look at for, like, to guide us through what a user might go through with these soundtracks. So, doing a quick demonstration of our interface, though, I thought the best way was to have a sample patient. So let's say we have a person who has all healthy characteristics. So heart rate and range, their blood oxygen is healthy, and their blood pressure is healthy. So what might we see? Based on this sonification design, we would expect to see a moderate tempo, the trumpet instrumentation, and then a major chord on our interface. So if we click over, just kidding. Cool.
You might want to double check the sound setting.
Oh, is it connected to the speaker? Okay, we'll try. Yeah, so super simple interface, like this is bare bones. Would hope to build it out soon. But let's say it's healthy heart rate, in range blood oxygen, and in range blood pressure, then that leads you to a track. And assuming the sound works. So all three things, moderate tempo, trumpet, and major chord. And sort of just to show you what like the opposite might look like, we'll go to like the super unhealthy, like opposite end of the spectrum, out of range and out of range. This is, so pretty obvious. Right, I remember, like, I think at an update report, Professor Kleinrock was like, how do you, like, what if someone isn't familiar with music? Like, can you tell? I think we can all tell there's a difference. So, and then you'll see like 12 different tracks, so these are all sort of different combinations of that, but those are the two most drastic, like, ends of the spectrum. Cool. Yeah, in terms of future directions, I really was envisioning in the future to have like real-time input and output, so hopefully like to connect like Bluetooth inputs of like heart rate, for example. So if my heart rate started changing, the sound I hear would change immediately when I attached it. So that was the goal. And so I did look into some possible ways to do that. There's like a software called C-Sound that allows you to sort of code music in a way. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Another point to look at is user preference. So depending on cultural elements and how a person individually interprets music, like a minor is not necessarily bad for someone, right? So being able to make some training models before we give them an actual soundtrack could be very interesting. And lastly, after talking to some mentors here, I would love to reach out to organizations, for example, the Arts Healing Initiative, to collaborate with people, expand on ideas, especially as someone with less coding experience. I think having more technical input would be great. Cool. Okay, and lastly, some closing words. So congratulations to our new cohort. I've had a lot of fun with this since it's just combining two of the things I really like. And some tips for you is to set very specific goals. I think quarterly and yearly goals are pretty easy to make, but having weekly goals, if you make like a Gantt chart or some sort of like checklist, is very helpful. Allowing your project to evolve, so you will hit roadblocks throughout the quarter, but the good part of this also is that you don't have any limits, and so taking that what you will, and sort of enjoying that. Cool, and that's kind of it for me. Thank you.
So this is really interesting, taking health data and generating music. But you can reverse it, but have a feedback. That music may change your mood and your heart rate and your blood pressure.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm not worried that it's polluting your data, but you can take advantage of it somehow. Sounds like another experiment.
Yeah. That's very interesting. I think in that order, there's a lot more like clinical trial studies to be done. So
Yeah.
it'd be interesting to put this together.
IRB.
Yeah, it does. Yes.
I was wondering the case study you showed. So what exactly, I think you showed without music and with music?
Yeah.
So what did that mean? Did you kind of do something similar to the demo you showed us, where it was like you show the results and then you play the tune like at the end?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in hoping to fit it in 10 minutes, I didn't talk too much about it, but let's look. Basically, it was a little more simple than the soundtracks that we heard. So like major chord and minor chord. It was like a MP3, like a voice memo of a chord on a piano. And so the mock test actually would have questions like, is this patient's heart rate in range? Is this patient's blood pressure in range? So the first time they would just circle yes or no. The second time, if it was healthy, I would play them the chord after each question, and then they would circle based on their determination. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Yeah, okay. I can also, like, in the report, there's, like, the mock test for you to see, so if you want to look at that, we can also chat later. Yeah. Yes.
You did all the facts yourself.
I did, yeah. Surprisingly, like, not super difficult. MuseScore is pretty helpful. Like, to change an instrument, you just click a couple buttons. Yes. Thank you.